AJ,
Hey, what's up?
I have a question.
Yes. Hopefully I have an answer.
I've been thinking lately of how hard it's been writing character relationships and creating those meaningful moments in the story. Do you have any suggestions on how to create those moments?
Ooh, creating memorable or say again, what kind of moments?
Meaningful
moments? Well, I mean, that's kind of a tough one to talk about, considering like there's so much there's so many dynamics involved in creating a good relationship, even in real life, right? When you're talking about characters, you kind of have to understand people.
Okay.
Right? So not just understand people, but like what's driving them, because what's driving them is kind of what helps create those meaningful moments, right?
What do you mean, like their goal?
Sort of. So you have their goal, you have their spine, right? Their goal is what they're headed towards. Their spine is like what makes them tick. Okay. But understanding like what makes them tick, like what do they really want, may or may not be their open goal, right? So in order to make something meaningful, that's the thing, making something meaningful for characters should not extend to something meaningful to the audience, right? I've mentioned this before with like politics. Like it's fine to write in politics in a film as long as it affects the characters, not the audience.
Right. But shouldn't that meaning be like enough to make an audience feel that something?
Absolutely. So in order to have the audience feel something, it has to be felt in your character. That's where the relatability comes from. Okay? Because if you try to force it, like I want the audience to feel this emotion, or I want to show the audience or to make them feel this, or to teach them this lesson, I want to inspire them to think about this, you're pulling away from the actual art of filmmaking and storytelling. You are now moving in the realm of didacticism, which is essentially like teaching people about stuff. And I still kind of lump together like trying to inspire people to do it. It's like, people are going to get inspired by whatever they're going to get inspired by.
Yeah.
People are going to feel whatever they're going to feel. You don't get to dictate that, really, from a filmmaker or storyteller standpoint. Right? So the only thing you can control and what you should focus on is creating something meaningful for your characters. So when you try to force something, if it's forced onto your character to make them, right, to make them feel something, or to make them choose something that is out of character, you're wrong. You see what I mean? So that's why
like motivation. Yeah,
it's kind of like their motivation. Again, what's their spine? What makes them tick? It's very, it has to come down to understanding people, right? Because you understand people, you're going to understand your character. And people are complex, right? Characters are often complex. So what they say and what they do, that's another thing too. It's like those things may or may not coincide with each other. And I think McKee talks about that adding dimensions to people. It's more of like that open contradiction. It's like saying like, oh, you should eat healthy, and then the next scene you see them scarfing down like donuts. That's a contradiction. That is a dimension of a character. And in McKee's definition, characters can have many, many different dimensions. So multi-dimensional could be like, I think he was in like 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 different dimensional characters based on the types of contradictions that they have. Right? So again, what it is like having those contradictions is one thing to make them complex, but how do those contradictions play into what they want, like what their real goal is or what their spine is, how it directly affects their lie, right? The lie that they believe. And again, like how the most meaningful stories I always feel are positive change arcs. So positive change arcs are ones where they change from one state or one ideology into another. and usually in a positive way where it's growth rather than a negative change arc where they become more of a villain.
Mm-hmm.
And typically those are stories. The positive change arcs are typically those that are stories where
Redemption?
It's sort of. If you talk about redemption, that could be a positive change arc as well. But you're essentially, your protagonist sacrifices something of themselves for the greater good or
Okay.
for others.
Uh-huh.
Okay? So in a negative change arc, it's almost the complete opposite. The protagonist will sacrifice somebody else for their own personal gain, right? Or
Okay.
their own selfishness, right? So having a positive change arc usually leaves a much more, I guess you could say, meaningful impact on people. If you're trying to say from an audience perspective,
So that would be like a positive impact, right? Because you can still do impactful with the negative change arc, correct?
yeah, absolutely, you can. It's just like if you're talking about meaningful, what's meaningful in those terms? When people think about like meaningful, it's usually like some sort of deep connection where it's like, oh, I feel that, I resonate with that. But it's sometimes harder to do that when they're being overly selfish and other people are getting hurt in the process,
Right.
which typically happens in a negative change arc. So it's harder to relate to other people because most people can relate to pain in terms of, well, if that other person's feeling pain and this person's being selfish, I've been in that character's, the one who's getting hurt, their shoes, and they become more empathetic. So it's not meaningful in the sense of the protagonist you're following. It's meaningful in the sense of the supporting characters that are there,
Okay.
right? So positive change arcs generally have, like I said, they're more easily relatable.
Okay.
Because it's something, it's like, oh, like people understand sacrifice. I have to give up something for somebody else or something else in order to gain something greater,
Uh-huh.
right? And so that's why it's a really tough question to ask, because it's like writing meaningful characters. And I've seen I've seen programs out there like how to write meaningful women characters, and it's like, yeah, it's just,
Well, it's more meaningful moments, right?
yes and no. I mean, again, it's
But
like,
is it based off each
no,
character?
yeah, it is always based off of each character, and trying to say it's like a particular demographic is way off base with actually understanding people and to be writing in a very effective manner. Because again, if you're trying to make it like I'm specific to this to force onto other people, you're again heading into that didacticism and less into the entertainment realm. That's like politics affecting your audience, not politics affecting your characters. It's different, right? And it's always those moments that are like the eye roll moments of like, they're doing this crap again, right? So again, if it affects your character, then that's where a person can relate to them. Ooh, what is that? Something in the middle of the road?
Oh, hello.
That's a crate. Where was I?
Creating.
Just something like that's relatable to them, like the situation they're in. So I think I've given this example before, right? How do you create a meaningful moment? Subtext helps a ton. Subtext is what's not being said, what is underlying, right? The underlying emotion or what's not being said that's actually driving that. So when someone says yes and they actually mean no, or if there's someone saying no and they actually mean yes, right?
Oh.
The subtext is what's not being said, not what is verbally being said. And one of the big mistakes I see a lot of screenwriters do today, like a lot of the indies or amateurs, what they'll do is they'll do very on-the-nose dialogue. So what they feel is exactly what they say. So there's no complexity in their dialogue, right? And it's just like that movie Invention of Lying. Everybody just tells the truth, and it's boring as hell, right? That's not what makes it interesting, especially when people are trying to get different things. They have different goals, right? So what's meaningful for each one of them, right, to create those meaningful moments, it changes all the time based on what they want, right? I kind of forget where I was going with it. But
Character motivation.
yeah, just
right?
character motivation. It becomes huge.
And those create the meaningful moments.
Yeah,
right?
I was trying to relay back to a previous thought that I had about it. That I know I've talked about it before, and I think again it was just being meaningful to your
Truthful?
meaningful to on the nose dialogue. Oh, that's it. On the nose dialogue. That's one of the big mistakes that, like I said, amateur screenwriters and indies do. It's like they just say what they're gonna say, and they don't mean anything different. It's like the invention of flying. It becomes very boring. There's no complexity to it. Like if a character only ever tells the truth, right? It's not that really interesting unless you add in some sort of risk or danger that's involved, not even typically for themselves, but for maybe for other people, right?
Okay.
I'm trying to think of what was that? I think of Shanghai Noon, Jackie Chan's character, right? He was taught to never lie, and it's like, oh yeah, he can't lie, and so when they asked him a question, the villains asked him a question, which the princess was supposed to get away, and it's like he can't lie, so he told them, like, I think he told them where they were at, and it was like, he can't lie. It's that in that sense, him always telling the truth became something of, that was actually causing the antagonist to continue to antagonize and get.
So we now have the dog with us.
Yeah.
Like, not anymore.
Funny. All right, sorry for the interruption on there. Here. I forget what I was saying. I mean, just on the nose dialogue that doesn't help your story at all. It doesn't really help your characters. It's like there's no conflict involved. Like if it feeds directly to the conflict, fantastic. And one of the examples I've used before is like, say your that was right in my ear, dude. Say your character, the conflict or whatever is, the problem is they need milk. All right, they're out of milk. Oh, there's a conflict, right? So in order to go get milk, they go they go down to the store, and they ask the clerk there, hey, I need milk, and he's like, oh, it's right over there. Okay, they get it. There's absolutely nothing interesting about that, right? There's no conflict. They went down to the store, right, and they got what they wanted. It's like they hand it to them. They don't have to work for it, right? They don't actually have any sort of give and take. And I know I mentioned this beforehand. Like, we grow through adversity, so being able to overcome something like that, it's like what is it? The hero's journey with Harold and Kumar. Right, Harold and Kumar is essentially a hero's journey story with the dual protagonists, right? Because they both want the same thing. They want the holy grail of burgers for them, which is White Castle, right? Harold and Kumar go to White Castle, and like they have this hero's journey along the way. Okay, so they do have a positive change arc that does happen. Things that were set up in Act 1, based off of their own lives. And they change by the end of it, okay? But if they were just going to like, oh, where do I go for White Castle? And they go down like, oh, it's just in that corner. Like, okay, great. And they go and get it. There's nothing of interest. But instead, they go on this whole journey to get to it. Okay, so kind of rolling back to like meaningful moments. Again, it needs to be meaningful for your character. Oh, I remembered it. Okay. Being able to be talking about having your audience fill in emotions by relating to the character, that's where I was going with on the nose dialogue. So if say a character just finds out that their mom died, okay, and the dialogue that is written in the script goes, oh my god, what? My mom died? Oh, there's denial, right? It's essentially denial, and then I can't believe it. She was healthy. I just talked to her. Oh my goodness. I can't. No, I can't go on with my mom and whatever. They're literally verbalizing everything that should be internalized. Versus if you see a character and they just find out their mom died and they don't say a thing and they just walk away, right? The audience will actually fill in. I know. Yeah, and it was what's going on here? The audience will actually fill in based off of their own experiences of death.
You made him sad by saying that.
I'm sorry, buddy. They will relate to that experience that the character is going through of getting news of a loved one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dying. And it obviously depends on the relationship that they had, if that's even established.
Uh-huh.
Right? And they'll fill it in. You didn't have to say anything, but it is relatable to a character, right? The character is essentially the embodiment of everything that's going on in your story, right? So anything that's relatable has to happen to that character. It has to be meaningful to that character. So if somebody was like, oh, I just got news that my mom died, right? And they're just like unfeeling because they have no feelings towards their mom that way, like maybe it was an absent mom, right? Maybe she was abusive, you know, maybe he or she, you know, always wanted to tell them off. They just never get a chance to. It's like, oh, whatever, you know. It sounds impersonal, but there's more to it than just whatever, because people are complex, right? But having them say exactly what they mean every second of the day, it's not a good way to convey emotion or relatability, right? How many times has someone asked you like, oh, well, how are you doing? And it's just like, okay, fine. But you're not actually fine. It's kind of that same sort of idea, right? It's more of like what you see on the surface is not what's going on underneath, right? Say if your character found out that their mom died and they're very close to them, like the whole movie, they're trying to get to see their mom, but they have to close this deal in order to afford to go see them, right? And right before they go into the deal, which is the deal of their lifetime, they find out that their mom actually died. Okay, that's a really crappy situation, right?
Yeah.
But now they still have to do the deal, right? Everything that they were going for because they wanted to get back to their mom, right?
Yeah.
Still didn't renege on the deal, and they're still trying to go through with it. So how would they feel going into that? That's a relatable, like, to me, is a meaningful moment because it affected that character, how they felt with that closeness to their parent, right? And how it affected what they were trying to do to get to them, right? The expectation versus reality, and reality in terms of what's real to them, right?
Yeah.
What actually happened, like, I just talked to her. That may have been a scene before. I just talked to her on the phone. They don't have to say that. That could have just been in a scene. Going, yeah, I was just on the phone with her. You know, I told her, yeah, I'll come by. Right? I just need to do this one deal. And then everything will be set. I'll come by, we'll see it. Then, boom. Right? Before they even go into the deal, they find that out. And then they still have to actually go and finish. So again, that changes. That also changes when, say, they go and do the deal, and all of a sudden they find out that their mom died. So different scenario, right? Different scenario. However, it being relatable to the character and what they want, what their spine is, what their dimensions are, right? Those are all really important things. Yeah. So saying like, how do you create meaningful moments? Make it meaningful for your characters. Don't make it meaningful for what you think the audience is going to want to see. Make it meaningful for them. All right. Hopefully that's sort of answers your question.
Yeah, that answers my question. Thanks, Jay.
Yeah, no problem.
All
Happy
right.
writing.
Signing off.
Signing off.
Bye.